So, hello. It's
Hi.
time for another Conversation Squared, but not just Conversation Squared, because it's Conversation Squared meets Voice This with Millani Jayasingkam. So, hello. How are you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
Pretty well, thank you. Pretty well. The weather took a turn for the worse, so I had a cold, and now it's gone, as I'm
Oh
sure
my
you're
God.
very happy to hear, because everybody loves to talk
Yes.
about the weather.
Well, it's very sunny here in Toronto,
Okay.
so that's good, thankfully, because like weather has been on and off these days. And I didn't know if I had to put away my winter jacket or not. And now I'm just gonna let it just go. I'll figure it out. If it's too cold, that's my problem now.
Yeah,
I
it's the
can't.
hard time, isn't it? Where you're going outside and you think, do I need my hat and my gloves and my jacket, or is it t-shirt weather?
Yeah, I can't. I can't. So now I've just officially just told myself I'm just gonna wear whatever I want. If I'm cold, I'll borrow someone else's sweater. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I will just deal with it. That's it. What can you do?
Exactly, exactly. And Toronto is an amazing city. I love it.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It can get better. No, just kidding. It's good. It's good. Born and raised here, so it's really fun, and it is what
Cool.
it is. So it's good. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Like I love to just walk through the city because it's for
Same.
me, like I'm from Scotland and from like my experience of cities were very small until
Mm-hmm.
obviously I'd been to London, which is a big one, but then Toronto was like, wow, proper skyscrapers and stuff. It was so big. Yeah.
There's more. Like if you haven't, there's way more now. So come on in. You'll be
Okay,
lost.
cool.
There's some construction now. So it's great. It's really well. There's always construction, but like you should come.
Yeah,
You should
awesome.
come and we should have this episode in person.
That would be amazing. Yeah, I haven't done that yet. Have you actually managed to get a guest in the same room?
No. Even though I'm trying to think, like I actually interviewed people in Toronto, but I did it during the pandemic. And now I'm restarting or I'm doing season 2 now, and everybody's remote at this point. Cause yeah. I didn't even bother thinking of like, oh, should we meet in person? I'm just like, hi, when's your availability? And then I'll just send them the invite. I like
Yeah,
completely forgot. But I was telling myself, I'm like, maybe we should try doing this in person because it's a whole new vibe. And I actually don't even know what that's like doing podcasting in person because I
yeah,
started during the pandemic. So this is what I know. This, and then the screen. That's it. That's the yeah.
yeah,
I don't know what it's like.
likewise. No, I think it must actually be quite nice to have a bit more of the sort of awareness of body language and other things than
I
just
know.
what's within the video screen.
Yeah,
Um,
it's true.
yeah, totally, totally. Um, I was just about to say something really weird, and now I've admitted it, so I'm going to have to reveal
Say
it.
it.
Is that, because I I've known so many people from our industry from online and mostly
Mm-hmm.
met many of them during the pandemic. Lots of
Yeah.
wonderful, lovely people. And I finally met many of them in Arlington at the Voice, conference last year.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I was quite surprised at the height of various people.
I knew it. I knew that's where you were going. I was even going to mention height too, because I was like, but then I'm like 5'3", so like I have nothing to say
Okay.
about height. So I'm not going to be like, oh my god, I'm shocked by everyone's height. They're so tall. Well, no, like duh. Like so for the most part, yeah, that makes sense. That's so funny.
Yeah.
What were you expecting, and what did you end up seeing?
Well, it would be cruel to single people out because I really don't want to do that. But I had certain expectations about the height of certain people just from their video image, from the way they
Yeah,
were interacting with people. And then when I met them, I was like, "Wow, you're taller or you're smaller than I expected." And
yeah.
it makes no difference really. The
No.
person is the person. Their height doesn't really matter. But still,
Yeah.
somehow it felt a tiny bit significant. Like
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. I think I was disappointed. Sometimes I'd be like, "Oh my god, they're taller than I thought." I've usually gotten like, "Oh, you're shorter than I thought." I was like, "What does that mean? What do you mean?" They're like, "You give off like." I've literally someone has told me that I give off 5'6" energy, and I'm like, "What does that mean? What?" So well, I'll
okay.
take it, but I'm only 5'3". But like, I was like, okay, like I give off taller. I don't know what that means, but anyway, I will take it. Thank you so much for those that commented. But yeah, no, I usually get you're shorter than I expected. I was like, yeah, I've been short, so it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a height,
Oh,
and who cares really? It's just
Yeah.
one of these things. I guess maybe I could lead that into talking about conversational AI, because as we're talking to this thing in whatever modality, we're building up a picture of that person or entity we're talking to, that persona. And even here, where we're seeing each other, we're still imagining more of the detail about that person we're talking to. What do you think?
That is interesting. Like, because the picture that you're saying, like the picture you have to paint, for example, for me is like, you don't know how long my arms are. You don't know, like, you know what I mean? That's actually so interesting that we subconsciously do that though. Like, right?
Yeah.
And then that's why in person, when you go see their height, you're like, oh, like you're shocked for if they're taller or not. Meanwhile, do we get that shock or like disappointment when we're dealing with modalities? Because when do we get confirmation of, unless they do something wrong or they say incorrectly, because you're like, okay, they're correct, I'm gonna ask them these questions, and they said something totally off board, and then you're like, but I feel like you get turned off easily or you get turned off, versus when it comes to like little disappointments, when it comes to height, you're like, it is, as you said, right? Like, oh, it doesn't matter because, you know, it's just height. But do we see that here? We're like, oh my God, let me turn off, like, you know how sometimes like it would start like, so right now I'm staring, I'm talking to it like it's right here. So I'm talking to my Google Home, and like I turned off the mic because sometimes it starts to like, starts talking out of nowhere. I'm like, no one's talking to you. Who like started you? So I have to turn the mic off because I'm like, no. And then I'm like, you know, we shut it down. I feel like we don't give it as much chances as we do for humans, which is a good and a bad thing, but we are where we are.
No, exactly. We're still adjusting to having these things in our homes, in our lives.
And we're still talking about it. And we're like, it's still the conversation. I feel like that was the conversation when I started the podcast, and it's like, still. Yeah. And now I don't know if we talk about it. Now we're like, oh, but ChatGPT though. Did you ask the questions there? Did you know? Side note, this is a side note, but like I was listening to a podcast and they're like, you can judge a person based off of their first prompt they put in ChatGPT. Like when someone introduces you to ChatGPT, you're like, oh, and the first question you ask it, you can judge a person by that. And I was like, oh my God, what did I ask? I don't remember now because I've been like just like playing around with it. And I'm like, but I feel like I would have been like, oh, what is that? Where can I get this? Like something really like basic and mundane. But I'm just trying to think of like, oh, you can judge it for, oh my God. Like this is like very interesting. But what did you put in? Or what do you remember your first search?
The first significant one, I'm quite excited to tell you because it was really weird and fun. Because, you know, within VUX World, we were talking about it and everyone was like, yeah, I'm going to try this. And I can't remember what the other guys did before me, but my first or earliest, like the one I remember was write me the lyrics to a death metal song about a murderous granny. And it was good.
That just like, that just shocked me from word to word. Like it just got worse. I didn't expect that. I was like, oh, and it was good. Well, I'm not gonna
Well, no, like it wasn't as if it is not like that completely came from nowhere because I think.
Are you trying to justify yourself? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
No, I'm not crazy. But it was, like some of the other stuff that was being shared was like it had, I think, someone had asked it to write in the style of Shakespeare, and it was pretty convincing. You know, not that I've studied Shakespeare apart from at school, but you know, for me, it was like, oh yeah, that feels like Shakespeare could have written it. And it was stuff where we're like, wow, we could actually push this and see what we get, and it's not like just a wasted time. It's like actually we're quite excited to see what we'll get back. So but actually mine was slightly inspired by The Mighty Boosh, which is a great comedy show. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No.
There's an episode all about murderous grannies. It's a comedy, you know, it's really So
that's where you got that, because I was gonna ask you, like, if you didn't bring it up, I was gonna be like, so Ben, I have a question for you. Where did you get that?
I only have adorable grannies in my life, so
okay, good. Okay.
no bad granny experiences so far.
Grannies are cute, so it can never be a bad experience.
Grannies are cute, and they're also like really a grounding experience, you know, all that wisdom and knowledge. I agree.
Sometimes
I wish
some are sassy, Some are not, but you got to deal with all of them.
Absolutely. Sassiness,
You take it.
that can be a good thing. But, sometimes I wish AI had a bit more of a granny element, like a bit more of that kind of grounded life wisdom, you know?
Yeah, that would be really nice. And like warming. Oh my God. Well, you know what? You can just ask ChatGPT and be like, pretend to be a grandma. And then that's it. And then just ask it to do whatever you want to hear. And then you'd be like, oh my God, I feel grounded and warm. Try it out.
I'm going to try
That's the way
that.
to figure it out. Yeah. I think it's called role play, right? Like where you give a role to ChatGPT. So here we go. Like, what do you mean I wish? Like it's already granted. They're just waiting for you to come on, Beth. Come on.
Thanks.
You did such a creative first, the whole thing with the whole murderous granny. You could do the same here. You can just kind of follow up and be like, now pretend to be one of the murderous grannies. No, I'm kidding. Don't pretend. Don't ask it to pretend to do that. But like, yeah.
It's so definitely worth a try. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the tip. I feel like we could do this for a whole hour, but I went to the effort to prepare some stuff. So
yes, you did.
I want to throw some structured questions at you. How does that sound?
Okay, that sounds good. I'll take it. I'm scared. Oh my God, I'm scared. No, I'm kidding.
No, don't be scared. Don't be scared. So I'm going to put up the tickers because they look nice. So here's the first one.
Yes.
And here is what we're going to do now, which is 30 seconds go. So, Millani, please, in roughly 30 seconds, you may go over. I'm not counting.
Beautiful.
But I would love to know, what's your favorite bot out of anything in the world? Any bot you've ever experienced?
Okay, so I would say there's one that I played around with. I was looking for cell phone plans like a couple of weeks ago, and one that like, I don't know if it threw me off, but I was like, wow, this is pleasantly good, is a Canadian company. I don't know if they're Canadian. Kudo. So they have a chatbot, and like they have GIFs, and they have a little tutorial how to use the chatbot, and it wasn't as rigid as I expected it to be, because their competitors, most of theirs was, because then I go check, right? Every time I see a chatbot, I'm like, ooh, are you good? And then I go play around with it. And then I'd be like, oh wait, I was here for something else. So then, I get, then I go and be like, okay, I'm here for the website for something else. But then for Kudo, I was like, this is so cute. Like the gifts were perfect. Like it was actually a very pleasant surprise. It matched the brand perfectly. It was actually genuinely cute. You know what? It's because it was cute. And I was like, oh my God, you're so cute. And then that was it. And then I fell in love.
That's great. And I would love to know, like, as you spoke to it, did it manage to, like, was it consistently cute? Was it consistently enjoyable?
It was consistently cute. That's why I was shocked, because I wasn't like, oh, you're not being, it didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like this was rigid. It was like the gifts were good, because I think I was like, because sometimes some chatbots have gifts, but then they'd be like a little too much, or they might add more than one. Like I've seen that where I'm like, why do you have two? Like you can just have one, and like that should speak for itself. This one had one, and then it'll say something, and most of them were buttons here and there, which is okay. But like for the most part, I was like, this is nice. This is such a good. I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, maybe I had no expectations or little expectations for it, but then I was like, oh, this is so nice. This is a pleasant surprise. Good for you, Kudo.
Yeah, great. Cool. One to check out. Second question, and that was lovely. You were very succinct. So please, we're all discovering new terms, new jargon. Everybody's bringing new terms to the table. Sometimes they use different terms for the same thing. So please, what's your most hated conversational AI jargon, and why?
I don't know. I hate is such a strong word.
Okay, it doesn't have to be hated, but which one jumps to mind and you're like, it's quite difficult to use that?
I'm not sure. When you were talking, there's one thing that popped in my head was there was a vote, or like a voting session that was put on LinkedIn where they were trying to figure out, how do we use these words now? Is it now chatbot? Is it still bot? Is it agent? Is it this? Is it that? And I looked at them like, oh my God. And like, I don't know if we came to a consensus, but I was sitting there, and I think it was Braden that like started out that the poll on LinkedIn. And I looked at it, I was like, oh my God. Like, why do we have all these things? Like, so agent is also a bot, but we can also say agent as a person behind the phone on an IVR. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like the fact that it's just all over the place. We can call a chatbot a bot. We can call this a bot. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just like conversation AI. Let's just keep it broad and then just call it a day. But to me, I think it's like the fact that I saw the poll, I was like, oh my God, really? So we use like that. To me, that is like, I don't know if we can ever come down to a point where we're going to call it one thing and be like, oh, it's a bot, regardless of what you make. I doubt it. But to me, the fact that we use agent here and there, and the fact that the poll was up, I was like, oh boy, we got a lot of work. This is fun.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to the results though. I like saw it and I was like, I need to figure out what the results were, but I don't know. I need to go figure it out. I don't know if the poll is still running.
Sure.
Yeah,
No, I didn't see it
in my mind.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't see that one, but I think even the fact that there's a lot of disagreement means that even the results, like it's almost like the question and then you see the disagreement is enough to know that we're still at that place where nobody can agree on these things.
Yes.
Even, we were talking about this at VUX, that I love the term bot. I like that. It feels good to say bot, and I don't have, okay, I have a bit of sort of negative connotations attached, or maybe a bit of prejudice about bots, but I love bots. But I remember that Kane was saying that, if it's like a sort of orchestrated collection, like can even be an orchestrated collection of bots, then that's an assistant. And I'm maybe misquoting him. Of course, I can't speak for him, but it was something along those lines. And it's like, I would also just call that a bot.
Call it a bot.
So
like a collection of bots. So now there's a bots with an S.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So now there's I forgot about, assistant. That's one thing. I think assistant, I don't know how I feel about it, but bots are okay. I feel like when I tell random people that I'm in conversation AI, they're like, what's that? And I'm like, bot? They're like, bot. Okay. And I'm like, yeah. Bots universal. Conversation AI is getting there, I feel, but it is what it is. But
yeah, exactly.
So
we just need to keep drumming on people. Conversational AI bot. Conversational AI bot, and eventually one day,
there's no polls.
Sorry.
There's no polls needed, because then we'll just know what we want to say rather than saying I forgot about assist, agent, bot, chatbot, this, that.
Yeah, there will be more. There will be more.
Oh, there'll be more. I feel like it's going the other way. Not like we're going to define it to one thing. I think it might just add on to more, but I can't wait.
Yeah. But one that is consistent is conversation designer.
Yes.
Even a few years ago, that wasn't really. It was like VUI designer, and now, that's good. Eh?
Yeah, that's good. Finally, that's good. But I also do see content AI designer, and then I have to go in and be like, okay, so the title says this, but what are you actually doing? So, but at the same time, I love the name conversation designer. Everyone goes, ooh, and I'm like, I know.
It feels good.
It's my favorite. Yeah, it feels amazing. Yeah. And I'm like, do you want to know more? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, and then I just go straight at it. It's my favorite thing to do. But
it does feel good. Yeah, totally. I think also the fact that it doesn't mention tech specifically is very good, because that's more of a kind of we have to be aware as much of users and what's going on in the world as we do with what's happening in the box and how it's all going to connect together. So
exactly. It's not limiting. That's true, because if it had incorporated anything related to tech, that would be limiting, and that means that we're just only looking there, but we actually do look at the users. That's a good point.
Thanks.
Nice.
Cool. Okay. So final 30 seconds go, which I always just push people way over 30 seconds, but I feel like these are nice little like conversation starters. So that's
love
the
this
concept. So the last one, if you could have any synthetic experience, as in any experience with kind of digital systems that give you any experience at all, what would it be?
Okay. The first thing I thought of, because I'm kind of lazy, is I want a virtual personal trainer who will help me with my workouts, who will also help me with my like workout plan, maybe even like keep me accountable, check my form. I think I need someone like that, right? Like where I can just turn it on as when I want, when I go work out, rather than going coordinating with someone, or like just working out by myself. I think if I had a virtual personal trainer, I would be the most happiest person in the world. That'd be so fun. I won't be able to have conversations, but like I think that would be something that, because I feel like if I work out alone, I'm bored. If I work out with friends, that's distracting. So it's almost like, where's your balance? And a personal trainer would be fun. And I think a virtual one would be more accessible and easy, and someone that can help me with my diet plan. So you know what? I just want to offload all this to someone else so that I can just go to the gym and then be told what to do. I'll be like, I'll do it. Thank you. And then, that's it.
Okay.
That's what I thought of. Yeah.
Lovely.
How do I automate my life or figure it out? That's what I want.
Okay,
a virtual
cool.
personal trainer. Yes. In
Good
whatever
one.
form, I don't know. Like, do I want it to be like, do I want to wear the glasses? I don't know. It might ruin the actual workout, but like, I don't know. TBD. Someone will figure it out.
Okay. I'm sure they're working on it. I'm sure someone out there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be cool.
Okay, excellent. So that concludes the 30 seconds go portion of this discussion interview. How did that feel?
It wasn't bad. I didn't like, to me, anytime someone goes, oh, in 30 seconds, do this, I would start panicking, be like, oh my God, what second are we at? Am I at 2? Am I done? The moment you're like, we're not even recording, I'm like, oh, so these are like 30 seconds imaginary. But like, that was still good. I still like it. It's fun.
Yeah, I really, like, I just considered that as a kind of like breaking the ice part of, like, because sometimes, now we can go a bit more into the main discussion, community building and podcasting. And, I like, as you've surely found, each guest is different. And sometimes you need to kind of build them up to talking about the thing, because at first, well, this is just, like a discussion is lovely, but a discussion with the recording light on feels different.
Yes, that's true. To be brutally honest, I had no idea that light was on. I don't look at that. I look at just the people, and then I sometimes look at myself and be like, am I still good? But I agree. Like back in the day when I first started, I was so nervous. I was like, oh my God. Now think about it, I'm like, is my mic working? I don't know. Back in the day, I would like spend an hour just to test and make sure everything's good. Do I look good? Now I'm kind of like, let's go. I'm ready. And I've noticed some speakers who are more experienced, they're ready to go too. They're like, yeah, here's when I'm free. So let's go. And I'm like, you don't want to prep? They're like, no, I'm good. I'm like, okay. Wow. Oh my God. Okay. This feels interesting. And I feel like that kind of got onto me where I'm like, me too. Do I need to prep? I probably should, but like, I'm going to pretend like I don't need to. Yeah. I'm good too. Yeah. Let's go. But it's very interesting to see experience versus people that are like, oh, you know what? Actually, let's meet and get organized. So it's very interesting to see both sides. That's what I've noticed in both of there's two types of speakers, I would say, or interviewees. People that are like, I'm ready to go. And people are like, hey, let's actually talk about it. I want structure. I want this. So very interesting. And I think I'm more so I'm like, I don't mind structure. Let's just go with it. Let's just talk and have fun. I feel like that's where I see myself. And I kind of discovered that through podcasting a little bit.
I feel exactly the same. I make a structure just in case it all falls apart and I don't know what to say, which can happen. Sometimes I'm talking to someone and I've got a mind blank and I'm like, I'm listening, the words are coming in, but somehow it's not all connecting in my mind yet. And they can probably see it on my face that I'm a bit like, keep talking. I'm gonna come to and it's also like, I love to listen. I like to just sit and listen and wait for my time to speak without, I don't want to break someone's flow, but genuinely sometimes I'm like, right now, I don't know what to ask you because everything you're asking is so good. And I don't have a question that I feel is good enough for what you're giving me.
Yes. Oh my God. You have no idea how many times I've gone through that. They'll see some good, like I'd be like, whoa, the answer's so cool. And then they'll be done. I'm like, that was awesome. All I have to say was like, that was great. That was awesome. And then when I re-listened to it, I'm like, Millani, you could have said so, like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, Millani, you could have said so much. You could have asked on this and followed up on this, but I was just too stunned. I was like, wow, this was great. And sometimes now I'm just like, that was a great answer. Let's go to the next one, because I'm like, you killed it. And I love when my guests answer. So you know how you give the script prior, right? Like the interview questions prior. So I do that as well. I love how, I guess, they read all the questions and then, they'll craft their answer sometimes. And I think they answer like 2 or 3 questions all in that one answer. And then I look at them and I'm like, oh my God, they just answered all of that. Okay, what's next? Like, no, what's next? I'm like, oh my God. So that's like in the beginning, that was really fun where I was like, oh my God, because I was so used to structure in the beginning. I was like, let me follow the script and be prepared. And I'm like, okay, but that answer just went to all three. So then what do I do now? And so nowadays I'm like, and I had one episode did with Erica. I gave her a script, but that conversation just like, that was not related to anything that we planned. Nothing. Mm-hmm. That just like went on, and I was like, I like this better. Like, thank you so much for not going through the script. This conversation is so much better, and it was so good. And that's when I appreciated the fact that I was like, okay, we don't have to follow the script, because sometimes they have their own topics that I can actually roll with it. And that's when I was like, oh, I guess I could. I'm not too like, I don't need to overthink and whatnot. Just go with the flow, and whatever happens, happens. And then usually, even though you edit and you post, you're kind of like, oh my God, is this good? I don't know. But then when you get the response, you're like, we got this. We got this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like you as you're developing the idea for the interview, you feel all of the potential ways it can go. And then you have to refine it to make your question list. And all of that potential is in your head. But when it gets released to the public, they don't know what you thought it could be, and they're usually happy with what it became.
Have you been to a point where like you've overthought episodes, or like you're like, oh my God, I don't know, I'm just gonna post it and just hope for the best, and everyone's like, wow, this is so good. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, because I'm scared. I don't know, because it doesn't go through plan, and you're like, okay, but I had a script. But then it turns out it's fun, because as you said, it's all in our head, right? We have all the assumptions. We're like, okay, we wanted to go a certain way, or we wanted to tackle these points, but turns out the episode itself, and it's because of also the interviewees that we interview as well, right? Like their knowledge is just, regardless of what question they answer, is just amazing. Like the answers that so far that I've encountered, I'm just so like, wow, you're so cool. Oh, right. I'm the one interviewing. Like I had to like constantly be like, okay, I have to continue asking questions, because I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool, but I also have responsibility. But it's an interesting experience for sure.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And, something is at the back of my mind, so I have to air it. And I think we've actually met before. And if you were involved with Voice Tech Toronto, which became Voice Tech Global, you were, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. Like that was actually one of my ways into conversational AI.
Me too.
Yeah.
Wait, so what were you doing there? Like, were you attending events? Because I feel like I've seen your name too. And I was like, okay, but I don't know what context prior to that as well. And they actually told me I think you remember this part where I contacted you. I was like, hello, are you free to edit a podcast? Like, and you were like, I'm so busy, but have fun. And I was like,
sorry.
I'm on my own. That's fine.
Oh, God.
Like, Paulina, I'm like, Ben is busy. And she's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, I'll just do it. It's okay. But yeah, so that was funny. She was telling me, she's like, oh, go contact Ben. He's like, like sound guru, like sound engineer. I'm like, ooh. And then you were busy. So it's okay. It's okay. It's
I'm
fine.
sorry. Yeah. Now I feel really bad.
That's so funny.
I can't excuse myself. That was bad. I'm sorry.
No,
I should have edited.
I think, you told me, you were like, you had a whole paragraph. You're like, I'm doing this. And I was like, that's fine. You have a lot going on. That's okay. You don't need a whole podcast to edit right now. That's okay. Thank you so much for your time. Oh my God. No, that's fine. But I love the fact that we ended up meeting now like this while we're telling each other, like, I saw you on Voice. This is so funny though. But like, were you an attendee for events? Like what? Because I know you were involved, but I can't remember how.
Yeah, it was quite tricky, and they did their best to involve me, like as in Tim, Paulina, and Guy. And so because I'm here in the Czech Republic and you're all in Toronto, I was on video call. Yes. But that's when you're on video call to a room full of people, it's a bit like the head in a jar on Futurama, except still not in the room. You're kind of like just this head on the jar in the corner. And so I was quite involved, and basically I was just observing and learning what was going on. Because at that point I was really pretty new to everything. And so I was coming from sound engineering into conversation design, which meant I basically was just slapped around the head by this thing called UX. It was like,
Oh,
what's
yeah.
UX? What is that? How does this work?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was really it. So I was, and I was involved for a wee while, but then I think there was a project that started getting developed. But maybe that's not so relevant. But what is, it's just making me think. So we were both involved in that, and then you asked me to help with a podcast, and I was too busy. But I would like to gloss over that.
It's okay. It's not a big deal. It's okay.
But what's really interesting to me, right, is that that was in Toronto. You're in Toronto, in the tech scene in Toronto. So I guess probably many of the people from that scene you're still in touch with to varying degrees. Like you're still aware of them, where they're working. And that's a community, right? You had that community at the start, and you may have worked with them, or you may not have worked in the same place or whatever. But that's already sharing knowledge, and then it spreads out, but you're probably still connected to those people. You've still got that network. How has it developed from there for you?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, Voice Tech Global, Voice Tech Toronto, it was like the most amazing. I went in, I was like, oh, this is just an event. And it was funny because one of my friends from middle school, high school, she was in front of the door, and I was like, hello? And so it was like so many like connections and reconnections, and it was like, oh my God, like, what are you doing here? How are you? And we met up, because we met up prior to that too, but like that was kind of like, again, a reconnection of like us talking. I'm like, oh, what are you doing here? What am I doing here? And I was just kind of like looking into it. I was like, okay, I've heard about voice tech through like podcasts and stuff like that. I'm like, what is this? What's going on? So let me check out this event. I remember the first event was Guy, and it was super technical. And me and my friend were like, do you get it? Do you get it? No, I don't get it. I'm lost. I'm on step 2. Where are you? I haven't even started. Oh my gosh, should we ask for help? And we were so lost. By the time we were talking, like it was already done. And Guy's like, okay, we're done. We're published. And I was like, oh my God, this was so overwhelming. Like, is this conversation AI? Oh my God, what was that? But then when I got to meet everybody, everyone was super nice. And this was like prior to the pandemic. And I really loved the vibe that the group had. So then I ended up volunteering. And then I was also part of Civic Lab as well. And I got to learn so much about everyone and their roles, as well as how to build, which I even took upon. Like, so I was working at Home Depot at the time. I would like take on the learnings there and, use it when I was so I came from UX. So to me, linguistics and stuff like that, I'd be like, who, what? So that's the background I come from. So that was very interesting. And even now, even though Voice Tech Global, they've stopped, there's still people that have gone to the events, but they're like, okay, so like, where are the events? Millani, you started. And I was like, what? Like, they're like, and I'm like, what does that even mean? So I've noticed that like people still actually look for events and trying to connect with people, and everyone has grown. A lot of people have transitioned that want to transition to conversation AI have transitioned. Some people are still learning. Some people are growing. So it's very interesting to see, because some people that were there, they were like, I just want to learn about it, but I don't know if I want to transition. It's more like just learning. Someone like myself, I think I wanted to learn, and then part of me was like, maybe I want to play in this field as well. So it was very interesting to see how we've grown from the past 3 to 4 years. And I still bump into some people, and that, like most of them, they're just like, yo, are there any more events? You host them. So for Toronto people, TBD, there might be something on the way. So,
good.
But anyway.
There's a need. Yeah. But that's it. That was a community, right? That was a community
amazing.
I was sad Voice Tech Global stopped, because I was so impressed by them that I did their course, the Advanced Conversation Design.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and it was brilliant, utterly brilliant. And so that was a community, right? And still it is sort of a community, because you all know each other, you're all networked. But it's like, that's sort of what I'm wanting to speak about a bit, that we need these little communities, these little networks where we can kind of tap into the collective knowledge, because nobody knows everything. We can't be linguistics experts, like graphic design expert if we're working multimodal. We can't have all of these skills, keep them all topped up, because everything's changing. So I feel like the community is pretty much the only way. Even reading books, there are great books, but a lot of it can be out of date as soon as it's published.
Yep.
I don't know, like I'm thinking of like some really great books like Conversations with Things. I think most of that's still relevant, but there is that danger. There is that danger.
Yeah, sure.
I really think like the community is where you get your finger on the pulse and see what people are talking about, where the skills are, what people are saying is relevant, right?
I totally agree. I love community building. I love getting people together. I think it's so fun. Just generally just like talking about nothing and everything. Just like learning about different perspectives. Because a lot of times on like if you're reading someone's post online, you only get a certain amount. Like actually it's kind of like interviewing in person, right? Like when you see these people in person or when you have these events, it's a whole nother vibe. It's a whole nother learning experience. And you get to see where their thinking process, like how their thinking process goes in their head and why they think the way they think. And it's like, oh, what are you doing at work? Oh, this is cool. Like, and it's really good to see. Or otherwise, we're going to be siloed. And it's just, I feel like we move faster as a collective for sure. And I love that. I love events. I love community building. That's like my favorite thing to do. And I can't wait to like actually bring something to Toronto. And I was thinking for me as well, the podcast was kind of a way to do that. But mainly it was more so like, I just wanted to learn more. And at the time, Voice Tech Global didn't have a course at the time. They were just making it as I was making the podcast. So I was like, okay, well, I want to learn something. Sometimes just reading on my own, like that's boring. To me, I'm like a people person. Like I learn from people. So to me, that's why community building, as you said, I'm like, I need that. Like not even a want, I feel like I need that. So that was the podcast is a way for me to interview people and get to know their way of thinking. But I didn't expect it to be as cool or like also as hard as it is to make one. Like I didn't expect that at all. No one told me anything. Ben, you didn't tell me. No, I'm just kidding. But like, no, I'm just kidding. But like, but for me, that was kind of what started it off. I was like, I also love to talk. And I think what also another part of it was like, I was telling Paulina, I'm like, hey, like, you know, you run so many events. And this was actually the last in-person event at the time because we didn't know pandemic was coming. I was like, why don't we like take the audio and just like, you know, make a podcast out of it. She's like, that's a great idea. Go do it. And I was like, oh. So that's kind of also how it started. And then I just kind of, and they helped me out with like, guests and interview questions and so on. And then I just kind of ran from there and I was like, oh, this is fun, but also really hard, but also fun, but also really hard. But yeah.
that's brilliant. I mean, they're a lovely bunch, like really fantastic people. And I think I can actually work in my poor communication skills as a sound engineer into this conversation constructively, because let me explain what I'm thinking, because that sounded completely weird, right?
I was trying to follow you and I'm like, that's so complicated. I hope he elaborates, because what was that?
I promise. I fully intend to explain what the hell I'm thinking. Because I'm reading a book right now about sound, but it's called Leading with Sound. And it's a very good book for the video games industry. And so what the author, sadly I can't remember his name right now, but what he's talking about is how sound itself is often a kind of afterthought. It's like post-production. And that's from the film industry, you know, like that's the kind of model from the film industry because it had to be at the end. And he's suggesting ways where sound can be more involved early. And so he's saying that a lot of sound engineers in particular really focus on the technical side. And they can also really focus on the design part. And that's what a lot of them talk about and what a lot of them write about and think about. But he's saying that you've really got to have this perfect trio in each person where they've got technical skills, design skills, but also communication skills, like the interpersonal stuff, because you won't get anything done without that. And I think when you reached out to me a few years ago, I was very much in sound engineer mode where it was like, just leave me in my cupboard. I just want to do stuff and I don't want to talk to people and I don't want to try and fix other people's challenges because I've got my own things to do. And you can't really evolve from there if you're just thinking of the technical part and maybe the design part, but without, you need this. The communication, the collaboration, the community to actually do good stuff. And that's like the main point of this book I'm reading. So So that's the first complicated part of what I'm saying. But you're nodding, so that's a good sign.
I'm following. So far, so good. I like it. Okay,
Excellent.
cool. This book sounds good. Okay.
Excellent. So how I would work that into what we're saying is that I think a lot of what conversation designers are talking about, especially right now with ChatGPT and prompt design, which is kind of the new, like, oh, that's so amazing, exciting thing, which is amazing and exciting. It's just not everything.
Mm-hmm.
Is that we're talking about the technical stuff. And again, design, it's design tech, like it's always got bits of both. But what we should also be talking about is our little communities, not just communities of conversation designers, but the community of the conversation designer in a team which has all sorts of different people. And you have to get on with those people to get something done. Or maybe not, maybe getting on. You have to be able to constructively work together, whatever that means to you. So that's where I was aiming with that.
That's a good point. That's because actually I was talking.
I'm glad it took me forever.
I followed. I was with you, and I was like, "Okay, this is going so. Okay, cool. This is cool." Which reminded me, I don't know. This is actually a part of an episode that I'm going to launch for season 2. But one of the talking points that I heard through the recording was that right now, because of prompt engineering and so on, designers and engineers are working closely more than ever. So the moment you're like, oh, we need to talk about that, I feel like the tech and design kind of pushed it to a point where we have to, or else we're not able to use the new things that are coming up, because design and engineers need to understand each other so that we can understand prompt engineering and figure that out. So I was like, oh, that is interesting, because he was saying that like we do work together, then we don't. Then we do, then we don't. And it's just kind of a bumpy ride, right? And like a lot of times development or like developers are like an afterthought of like, oh, let's design and then we'll just give it to them and then they can figure out from there. And even in UX, we talk about how like we want to include everybody in the room from day one and make sure all those points are like covered. So it's not like, oh, developers then find it at the end. So, and we're still talking about it here as well, but I feel like now it's almost getting to a point where we have to, or else. Yeah. And it's like very interesting that like it kind of ties back into communities. So it's almost like we need to actually, community is actually much more needed than ever now because of all that's going on. And it's hard to keep up by yourself too, right? Like, it's like, how do I keep up with everything without, asking other people or like hearing things from other people? So if you want to learn fast, you got to work together. There's like all those quotes, right? Like, oh, like if you walk alone in the path, it's going to be slower. Go with someone else, or, all that. Like, same thing. Apply it to all the community building. It's the same thing. So I really think it's genuinely important. And also that's how I learned. So I'm like, I need it. So let's do
it. I think we all need it. Absolutely. So often I'm like, oh, I should be as knowledgeable about linguistics as, for example, Micah Chronofeka. And it's like, well, that's not going to happen. But, sometimes like she'll want to talk to me about sound, as has happened in the past. And it seems like that's my thing that I can contribute to the discussion. And we're all, if we're all just sharing this, it's, that's just, of course, conversation designers. But when working with, for example, technical people, the coders and so on, we're not going to be able to tell them how to do their job. And that would, of course, be quite pointless. So we just need to be able to understand enough to communicate with them about it, to get the thing done, to like ask them for their help and they'll ask us for our help. And the only way to get that kind of dialogue going is to just sustain it, be in communication as much as possible.
And what I really like about our community is like conversation designers are very open and kind. Like that's what I've noticed. And I was like, they're so warm and cute and like nice. Like it's actually so it's actually not that hard, I think, to build a community. I think it's missing. So that's what I noticed actually in Toronto is within the past 2-3 months, multiple people asked me and I was like, okay, this is interesting. The fact that people are like asking for it. Someone asked me last year and I took it as a joke last year. I was like, hey, yeah, okay. That's a lot of work. But then the more and more people started asking me, I was like, oh my God, this is needed. And I love how they're coming to me. I don't know what that means, but I will take it. And I guess they know. I also love, like, now I think about it, like, I love that. Like, I love, like, creating events and, like, planning it out. So it's almost like everyone just went, yeah, she looks like she can do that. Let's go.
Seems like it. Seems like it.
So that's kind of, it's very interesting that, like, I think what it is we all know we need it. It's just, like, kind of hard to do it, right? Who's going to start it? Who's going to be responsible for it? So, yeah. So I don't know if I can talk about it a little bit, but we're starting, there's something called AI Speak Easy. So we're trying to start that right now. I'm working with 2 other people from wisdom.ai. And so we're going to create a community, because that was kind of what we're missing. We were talking back and forth and we're like, oh, there's a lot of events happening in Europe and it's very casual, but, like, where's that here? And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, okay, let's start one. And I was like, oh, oh my God. Now another person's asking me. I'm like, okay, let's do this. And then even the day we were going to talk about it, someone asked me, another person asked me, they're like, oh, like, where is Voice Tech Global? That's the main question everyone's asking. They're like, where are they? And I'm like, I know, I miss them too. And they were just an amazing group and just amazing, but they're not. And they're like, oh, like, you should do it then. And I'm like, I'm working on it. Okay. Like, I'm just starting the first meeting. Okay. Like, just everybody hold your horses. Hold on. Let me just figure something out. So I love how much there of a need there is. And I think people want it. And it's just, starting it is really hard. And I think maintaining it is a whole nother thing. And I don't know what that's going to look like. So we'll see. TBD. We can do a follow up on that. But, like, from your side, actually, I wanted to ask you, actually, you know what? I'm going to flip this interview a little bit. You've been asking me questions and, it was really nice. But now let's flip it over. So it's Voice This meets Conversation Squared. So
can you see my discomfort?
Well, guess what? We're not going to follow a script. So I'm going to ask you, okay? Because I'm curious now. So community building on my end was, creating a podcast. And I love that because I love talking to people. But you were saying how you're like, oh, I'm more so like tech and design. So what about for you? What does building the podcast look like? What was community building look like? What was that response? What did all this look like to you?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the question.
No problem.
It's quite strange to have the tables turned. Wow, I should be much nicer to my guests.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. It's okay. No. You know what? Just on a side note though, I actually learned so much from editing because I used to edit in high school and then I let go of it because I was like, oh, this is fun. But then I didn't know if I can get a career out of it. And then I just and then when I tapped back into it, I was like, I miss this so much. And this was like years later, I'm like going through, I'm like, oh my God, this is so much fun. Exhausting, time consuming, but it was so much fun. I was like, oh, I can do this in a day. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm still not done. It's 3 weeks. So sometimes it takes a long time, but I the whole experience of podcasting was great. Sorry, back to you. This question was for you. I don't know why your turn. You end.
Totally fine. I love editing as well. Like I've done so much that you get into a Zen mind when you're doing it that you don't have to question. You just start to feel where it should go. Anyway, so with Conversation Squared, the intention was to basically crowdsource the knowledge because there's a hunger for it. People want to know what's going on and how to do it. And so the way I see it is like, if I ask enough people about the relevant topics of what we have to deal with, then the data, so to speak, will start to fall into piles, which are like stepping stones for people. So, if enough people say this is true, then that becomes a stepping stone and we all say, okay, that's a good one. We land on that. And then where do we go next? That's kind of the visualization I have for it in my head. As far as community building goes, I'm still trying to get to grips with that one. Like I was doing a lot more LinkedIn posts in the past, and I quite enjoyed it, and it became almost like a game to try and see how many likes you can get. And then I realized that this is not really satisfying me anymore because I did start to get quite a lot of likes, and I realized, is this actually helping? And so I've sort of taken my foot off the accelerator with that. And but yeah, like maybe the most relevant one I did was I made a links board called Conversation Designers Links on Notion.
Okay.
And when I shared that, I made it over a year ago. And when I shared it, it got a very good response. Like people were really excited, like, thanks so much. Because basically I'd collected every link that was useful to me and put them into categories like linguistics or UX or whatever, or even start here. And so many people were joining, and I shared it with them, and they were like, oh, that's great, because that shows me roughly like how to navigate this, how to get an idea of what to do. And then I haven't updated it in quite a while, but I still get very nice messages from people saying, thanks for that, it helps, which is great. But I haven't updated it in a while because I discovered that I couldn't stay up to date. I couldn't add them fast enough. And then, just like trying to get likes on LinkedIn, I was trying to get enough links into the board to keep it relevant and manage it. And I was like, I can't stay up to date with everything that's going on and even eliminate the stuff that's irrelevant now. I literally, I was looking at it like, I just can't, I don't have the time. And so I stopped, and it's still online, and people still tell me they appreciate it. So that's great. But that was kind of, I was trying to sort of basically honestly position myself as someone that people would come to for knowledge. I thought that that's a very good position to be in, partly self-promotion. That is, of course, part of it. But also trying to be useful. Like genuinely, like the self-promotion doesn't work unless you're useful. It can't just be hot air. It needs to genuinely be useful. So that's what I was aiming for. Like, if I can be genuinely useful, it should lead me to good work and peace, love, happiness, everything.
Yes, that's so sweet. That is so sweet. And I noticed one thing that we both have in common is that, in a way, the links was for you too, right? Like, you wanted to learn on your own, and you just put it into a database, and you're like, okay, here's a Notion page for everyone else. That was kind of my thing with the podcast too. This was for my learning, but like, if anyone else is curious, here you go. Here's an audio version. By the way, we're gonna launch on YouTube too soon. Just an FYI. Oh, we already launched, so cool. That's yeah. So there's more videos coming. Thank you. That's also a lot of work too. But yeah, so so I noticed that like it was for both of our learnings, and like, one thing that you mentioned was like you were genuine, and I actually heard this as a comment for the episode, was like, I feel like you're so, like, they were like the episodes and how you speak to people, it was so genuine that it was nice to hear. And I was like, cool, because genuine, like, I was genuinely interested in the conversation. This was genuinely for my knowledge as well, and I'm like, if it helps someone else, that works for me too. Like, that's just a bonus, right? But also at the same time, when you start helping other people and you start hearing comments, you're like, thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, I can help you anyway. Yeah, okay, cool. So it is like a little satisfying. You're like, oh, look at that, like, I did something. But like, the fact, I think genuine, like the fact that you're being genuine, you're into, like, your intention definitely is out there. That's probably why you got the likes that you got, and like the messages that you still get is because they resonate. So I think when you're building something and when you're doing something, I think the intention is very, like, people can read that. And if you're being genuine, it's not like something that you forced to do. It's just, you're passionate about it, you're curious, and they can read it. And the fact that when they said that out loud to me and as a comment, it's like, oh, this is what I found about your podcast, I was like, that's deep. Like, I didn't know you can, like, I thought you were just going to learn about conversation AI and like how to design it, whatever. Like, whoa, you called it genuine? Wow, thank you. This is, wow, you guys. So I think that's why I love the community so much more, because they're so cute.
No, totally. And really, you cannot fake curiosity. I think it's so apparent when somebody is really eager to, like, dig deeper, to learn more, to understand more. It's, it comes across quite clearly. And there's a lot of that in this community, right? There's, because I think you would really struggle if you didn't want to learn more, because you can't just say, all right, I'm going to read that one book and then I'm going to stop.
That's it. Just designing voice user interfaces, maybe like 2 pages of conversations with things, and that's it. Thank you so much. We're good. I'm a pro. You'll be lost. Like, 2 seconds there, you're already like, no. Yeah, that's so true. That is so true. But yeah. Oh, a next question for you, because I'm not done. Because I flipped it. Now I'm going to keep that because this is fun.
Wow. Okay.
I know, like, it's funny now that I think about it. These are questions you were supposed to ask me, but I'm just going to ask you because why not? And I'll answer with you too. So,
Please.
we were talking about keeping up to date, right? So,
Yeah.
how do you keep up to date?
Oh. Well, I think when I wrote that question, I was going to hopefully lead towards building a community. But actually, there is more to it. There is more to it. The up-to-dateness for me is this, speaking to people, learning from people, even like this, or previously I was very involved in Voice Lunch, and that was great for it. Now, I'm honestly not so sure if it's still going. If it is, sorry, that wasn't meant to be a dig. It's just I'm not very involved anymore. And so various online communities and LinkedIn and so on. But also, I work with Kane Sims, like I listen to
Pretty
him
good.
all the time. He's knowledgeable and connected, and he's always learning from people as well. And then also Justin Randall is our chief technical officer, and he's like utterly brilliant with many aspects. But of course, he's a technical officer, so really on the tech side, I'm learning a lot. And then in the team, there's a lot of curiosity. So there's only 6 of us, but people are finding articles and sharing them in our Slack, just like, hey, folks, this could be interesting to you. And so I go and look at that. And that's it. So I would say I've got a bit of, it's not officially like mentoring, but from Kane and Justin, I'm getting that from them. And then in the team, a lot of knowledge share, and then online. And how about you?
Pretty much the same. So online as well. Yeah, you know what? I love how you were like, it's mentoring, but not mentoring. It's not unofficial mentors. So I feel like I have a couple of those where I'm like, ooh, you're so inspirational. I want to follow everything you do and everything you say. So I love that. I feel like there's subconsciously I have so many unofficial, like if I see their name on LinkedIn, I'm like, ooh, what do they have to say? See more. So there's that, there's community building. And I think like in a way, me talking to the interviewees or connecting with people, having coffee chats, that's kind of my way to keep up to date. And like trying to figure out, okay, what books are you reading? What articles are you reading? I also speak to Elaine on the side, so we'll just share things and we'll be like, did you see that? Did you see this? So like, there's like different levels of like unofficial mentors to random articles and books, people, coffee chats, and then random messages to Elaine. So that's how I keep myself up to date.
That's it. But it's really like, that's a lot of community, right? That's really connections. Yeah.
It's at the end of it, because that's how I learn. So I'm like, okay, people is my thing. Conversations with people is my thing. So I'm like, okay, let's do that. That's how I learn. So I can design for conversations with things. Ooh. Okay, but anyway.
No, like that. That is it.
Yeah.
That's it. Even when I was speaking with Kane, like I did one of these with him because he'd done 5 years of VUX World, and I said it's not surprising that what VUX World is now, and this isn't intended to be a plug, but it sounds like one. But basically, consultancy. But it started as a podcast, and I said it's not ironic that a business built on conversations started with him having lots of conversations, because we're learning from each other, but we're even just experiencing the conversation, like the kind of ebb and flow and the different ways that people express themselves. And it's like constantly topping up this idea of how we communicate, which also, oh God, sometimes my brain is just like, and another thing. So I'll stop after this. But the reason why this is called Conversation Squared is because we're talking about conversation design, but we're having a conversation. And what I hoped for the viewers, listeners, is that there's maybe a little bit of like conversation analysis for them as they're watching or listening, because they're learning, but also at the same time, they're just hearing people talking, and they can analyze how we react to each other. The constant like reactions and even the facial expressions and everything. Like, so I sort of wanted it to have that kind of meta layer of information. If that doesn't make me sound too clever, because that was unintentional, because I'm not very clever.
No, that was so cool. And I want to steal that now. I want to be like, that's why I named it Voice This, because I want you guys to voice it out as well. Like, you guys listen to Voice This and you guys can voice this out and make new connections. I think I just found it kind of cool. Yeah, because I felt like voice this was very like generic, but also kind of cool. And then I'm gonna add an exclamation mark because I'm really cool. But it turns out it doesn't work for SEO, but it's too late because it's been 2 years. So whatever, we gotta do what we gotta do. But yeah, that is at the end of the day, that's kind of again, our intentions just kind of come out, right? Like the way you name it, the way you do things. I think once you put your intentions in there, it actually does flow, and people do. That's what I end up doing. Like I was listening to one of your episodes, and I just had a conversation with myself. I was like, ooh, this is cool. That's cool. That's a neat part. And then I would laugh with you guys. People are laughing. I hope they laugh with us. I hope they're not laughing at us. But like the fact that they do, like, they would chuckle and we chuckle, or like, if we make a good point. Sometimes I react when I listen to podcasts. I'm like, ooh, that was good. But like, I'm not talking to anyone, right? But like, even then, that they are interacting with the episode real time sometimes too. So, or maybe it's just me. If it's just me, then okay, then that's a whole thing.
No,
but like,
me too.
yeah. So like, whenever I feel like that's just a whole level of, that's just cool. I just wish like we can like see these reactions. If there's a way where we can see people reacting to our episodes, and if you guys want to do that, you can record and send it to either one of us or both of us, all at the same time. That'd be kind of cool.
That would be crazy.
Like that would be right.
People doing
like,
their reaction videos to our podcasts. It would be utterly fascinating and a little bit strange.
Yeah, just a tad bit though, because it's a tad bit strange. But there's like TV shows about people like watching TV shows. So why can't we have a podcast about people watching podcasts? Who knows? I'm not doing that. I was like, someone else can do it, and then they can watch us. That would be cool. But anyway, so that's interesting.
Yeah, I think, Millani, we need to wrap it up because I think we've been talking for over an hour, which is lovely.
And I can go on. I can go on till the sun sets. Like, I don't know where the sun is at for you guys, but ours, it's only 9 a.m. right now, so we can, keep going. But yes, this was such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for letting me steal a couple minutes where I can interview you. That was really fun.
Thank you. That was lovely.
But yeah, likewise. And thanks for having me. This was great. So hopefully we'll have a follow-up and see how things go. And that time we can do Voice This meets Conversation Squared with Ben.
Deal. Let's do it. Yeah.
Less yellow though, but like we'll figure it out.
Yeah. We'll manage something.
Yes.
We'll tell the community and they'll know.
Exactly. So, sounds good.
Millani, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.